Welcome to A Cup of Gratitude with Amanda Schaefer. Hi, I'm your host, and I'm so glad you stopped by. This podcast is really for anyone, anywhere, anytime. And it's about taking a moment to slow down and look around and actually see all of the good things that are there. There's no question that asks, is your cup half empty or half full? But I think a better question is, what's in your cup? I mean, a drop of gratitude will benefit your life unimaginably more than a full cup of anything else. So let's settle in and take a look at how we can shift our focus and embrace the joy and the wonder of the life that we have. And once you start, you won't be able to stop seeing the good. And just like me, you won't be able to stop talking about it. And somehow that creates even more. Even in the midst of difficulty, even when it's really hard. Learn how to drink from a cup of gratitude. Welcome. Today we are speaking with Nalini. She's a trainer, a transformational coach, an author, a podcast host, a musician. And honestly, friends, the list goes on. This is why we need to talk to her today. So just sit back and settle in and get ready for an amazing story. Welcome, Nalini. How are you?
Thank you so much, Amanda. I'm well.
I'm really looking forward to this.
Me too. I'm so excited.
So let's start at the beginning, shall we? Could you tell us a little bit about your childhood?
Okay. Well, I am Anglo-Indian. I know you cannot tell that from my accent, but my dad is Indian. He is from Mumbai originally, and my mum is British. So she's from the UK, born and raised in Norfolk. And they had a whirlwind romance in Zambia, where they both ended up teaching at the same school when they were in their, late 20s. Mm-hmm. And so they got married in Zambia, and I think they thought of the ramifications afterwards.
Yeah.
They then decided to go to the UK and introduce my dad to the family with an idea that possibly they could end up settling there. Didn't quite go to plan. First and foremost, the weather. My poor dad couldn't cope. But also, I think just, the day and age in which this was all taking place. Yeah. Multiracial marriages just wasn't the done thing. And so it was a tough adjustment. Anyway, they then moved to India. Same thing. My dad had an arranged marriage all lined up for him. So he arrives with this, Western woman on his arm. Didn't go down very well. So they actually ended up moving back to Zambia. I was born in India, but moved back to Zambia with them as a little girl and grew up there. And eventually they moved to Zimbabwe, and I actually spent the predominance of my childhood in Zimbabwe.
Wow. That is a world traveler edition of a childhood. I mean, wow. They just, I'm so sorry. I've had this conversation with several people that who you marry would affect where you could live or how you're received. I still don't understand racism. I don't understand it at all. I never will. I always look at the heart. So I'm so sorry that was their experience.
Yeah, for sure.
So when you were young, your brother was diagnosed with a disease and eventually passed away. And I'm so sorry for your loss. What were you feeling? What was that like for you to lose him?
Look, it was devastating. I mean, I was about 3 years of age. Wow. He was 5 when he passed away. And I was born into having an older brother. So I didn't know any different.
Yeah.
So losing him was almost like, even at that age, was like losing a part of myself. I remember experiencing terrible loneliness, which was an unknown emotion for me at such a tender age.
Yeah.
And I guess deep, deep loss, which for me translated into that loneliness, that sense of kind of bewilderment, like, where do I fit now? What do I do after nursery school when we used to just play together and be together all the time? It was a very before he died and after he died shift in my life.
Yeah, I can't even imagine what that must have been like for you. And like you said, you were at a tender age to have lost him.
Yeah.
So you told me at that time you used to sit in your wardrobe and you would talk to Jesus. Do you remember how that felt? And how did Jesus respond to that loneliness and your pain?
Oh, wow, that's beautiful. Yes, I think because the way Mum presented my brother's death to me was, your brother has passed away and he's gone to heaven to be with Jesus. Those were her words.
Wow.
And whenever I used to ask her, why did he die? Because I remember when he was sick, we used to pray for him to be healed.
Yeah.
And I would ask her that question. So why did he die when we asked Jesus to heal him? And her response was, but isn't to be with Jesus perfect healing?
Wow.
And so I would sit in the wardrobe and have these conversations with Jesus in my mind, because I knew he was real. I knew he existed just off of my mum and dad's faith. I mean,
Yeah.
their conversion to Christianity was radical. So
Yeah.
it was very evident for me, even at that young age. And so I would sit in the wardrobe and I felt like if I could connect with Jesus, I would somehow be able to connect with my brother.
Wow.
Because I knew Jesus was with my brother.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Yeah,
That
so I would,
at 3-year-old age, you were able to process what your mom said and your loss and know that if you connected to Jesus, you were going to connect to your brother. That's amazing.
yeah. And so the way it felt for me was like this was my moment to converse with Jesus and ask about their day and, what has my brother been up to today? And I would paint these pictures in my mind of what they must be doing in this incredible place called heaven together,
Yeah.
And so it would actually fill me with warmth and it became like a happy place for me. And I realize now that it was actually my way of dealing with my grief,
Absolutely.
because it became like a comfort to me, which was incredible. And how Jesus responded to my loneliness and my pain, well, I think in the form of these pictures, because they were the most beautiful pictures in my mind's eye, my little girl, naive mind,
Yeah.
of them playing together and fields of flowers and just happiness, and other children that too had, gone to glory, of them just dancing and running and playing and just laughter and joy, which was far removed from his last few days on earth.
Yeah.
Which was extremely painful and traumatic.
It's amazing to me that a child who was 3 years old could take all of her feelings like that and just allow them to be and to move into healing. I mean, you didn't really do that on your own. He really was there with you.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And that just gives me chills.
Yeah. And I think also because my mum and dad handled it so beautifully.
Yeah.
I understand. I mean, I had an interview with my mum on her own navigating of grief and the loss of her child. And we were able to talk openly about my experience and her experience. But her response to me was so integral to my perception of what had happened and to my healing also. Because I think we forget just how reliant little ones are on their parents.
I think you're right. And they laid this foundation for you to be able to handle something so traumatic
Yeah.
in that way.
such a beautiful way.
Such a gift, such a gift.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, very fortunate that those are your parents.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. Now, your mother eventually, you did spend a lot of time in there, and eventually your mom arranged for you to go to kind of an after-school program. You had told me
Yes,
that?
she did. Yes,
Yeah.
she did. And it was with a beautiful girlfriend of hers called Colleen.
Uh-huh.
And she was just adorable. I loved her to bits. And she had the most beautiful dress sense, and she always used to wear high heels and makeup, and her hair always used to look fabulous. So as soon as Mum mentioned to me that it was going to be with Colleen and Colleen was going to be picking me up, I was like, yep, I'm in. And so Colleen picked me up for this after school program, and it was at the local Baptist church. And, you know, we had games and fun activities. I was a bit of an outsider, I think. I was so used to my wardrobe.
Yeah.
It was unfamiliar to me to be amongst other children like that in a social setting. And so, you know, I kind of remember sort of standing on the fringes of all the activities that were taking place. But when she eventually, after snack time, sat us all down, she would tell us a story about Jesus.
Mm.
And of course, immediately I had this, oh,
Yeah.
this is the same Jesus, you know?
Yeah. Wow.
And at the end of her story, she asked if anybody wanted to give their hearts to this Jesus and make him Lord and Savior of your life. And I just remember then, I mean, I was probably like 3.5, 4 years of age.
Right.
Thinking to myself, I want this. I want this for myself. And so I ended up praying the salvation prayer at like the tender age of 4.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's amazing. Oh my goodness. I love that it resonated with you, that when she told the story, you recognized Jesus.
Yes.
Yeah.
I knew it was the same Jesus
Yeah.
that was with my brother. And
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. Same one who sat with you in the wardrobe.
Yes.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. So, what an amazing experience. And, you know, here your mom was, I think, just trying to get you out and socialize you, but it actually is the thing that led you to really accepting Christ.
Absolutely. I think she knew that all along, but I didn't.
I'm sure. I mean, moms have a way of thinking a few steps ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, eventually the Billy Graham Crusades came to town, and you said that you began to feel, this was when you were older, a stirring in your heart to share the love of Jesus through speaking and music. And these are talents that you obviously got from God. Like, how did you respond to that? What did you do?
This is the amazing thing, because it actually wasn't far off from when I gave my heart to Jesus. I was still around 4. The Crusades came to Zimbabwe and we had access to watch them on televisions. So our church asked for families who had televisions to open up their homes of an evening, gather people around the telly with nibbles and drinks, you know, and we would all sit and watch the Crusades together. And like, this was soon after me giving my heart to Jesus, continued with my, you know, wardrobe moments with Jesus.
Right.
And here I am sitting in front of this tiny little black and white dodgy reception television with a whole bunch of other people, hearing this gorgeous man preaching so fervently about the same Jesus. And so I was blown away. And, you know, every now and again, the camera would pan to the audience and you would just see people weeping in their seats and just completely mesmerized by what this man was saying. And then at the end, he would do this altar call and call people forward. And I just remember being blown away that people were responding and standing up out of their chairs in a massive auditorium setting and going to the front to also pray the same prayer that I had prayed, you know, just days prior.
Yeah.
To invite Jesus into their heart. And I knew then that's what I want to do. I want to share the love of Jesus through music.
Yeah.
And so my response was, I nagged mum and dad for piano lessons. ended up having piano lessons. They spent their life savings at that point on a little upright piano so that I could rehearse at home.
Wow.
And that literally became my life after that. I was immersed in music. So would go to school, come home, practice. That was it.
Wow. As you were telling the story of looking into the TV screen and seeing when they would pan in the audience, seeing the people standing up and seeing the looks on their faces, your voice, as I heard you talking about that, like that was prophetic about who you were going to be, because
No doubt.
that is how you are now. And
Wow.
this little 3.5-year-old girl, that God gave you the dream then.
It's so crazy. And when I share it with people, it's as real to me today as
Yeah.
it was in that moment,
Yeah. And
years ago.
most people can't even remember when they were 3,
No,
No.
no.
Wow. That's beautiful. You eventually moved, I think it was in 1997, you had said you moved to London to pursue a musical career. And you noticed you weren't feeling really well, and you registered with a doctor. What happened?
Yes, you're right with the dates. It was 97. I was 18. I had finished my studies with the Associated Board of the Royal College of Music, was now a classical pianist.
Right.
And yeah, the vision had never changed. I was going to move to London, pursue a musical career. But of course, the ultimate goal is I'm going to be sharing Jesus,
Right.
just like Billy Graham
Right.
with people. So yes, wasn't feeling well on arrival. And after a couple of months of, having the odd conversations with mum where I was just like, oh, just not eating right, just don't feel well, just don't feel fit like I used to. My energy's gone, just not good at all.
Mm-hmm.
She was nagging me. You need to register with the local clinic. Just, get yourself checked out, make sure everything's tickety-boo, she said. And so I did, registered with the local clinic, went in for a checkup, explained to the doctors, what I was feeling and struggling with. And so they said, okay, we need to do some tests. So they did blood tests. They then said to me, look, we need to do an ultrasound just, to check on things internally. And I was like, don't they do ultrasounds for pregnant people? And they said, look, pregnancies, but also any kind of growth. So, if there's a cancerous growth or of any sorts, we'll be able to pick it up with that. So that then put fear in me that, oh my gosh, okay, I must be sick. There must be something really wrong. So they do the ultrasound. I'm working by this point. So was at work a few days later, and I get a call at work from the doctor to say, I need to see you. Your results are in. I need you to come in. Can you come in today? I said, well, I'm at work. I'll only be back in your area probably about 6, 7 o'clock tonight. So I thought he'd go, that's fine. Let's make another date, when you've got capacity. And he said, I'll wait. And so for the rest of the afternoon, I've just got anxiety now through the roof, chomping at the bit because I'm thinking, okay, he's going to tell me I've got cancer or something ridiculous, and my time's up and I'm never going to be able to fulfill the dream that's in my heart. Okay, so go to the doctor's that night, and he sits me down, and the first words he says to me is there anyone that can be with you at this time?
Oh my goodness.
What a way to start. And my boyfriend from Zimbabwe had actually just arrived in the country. He'd been in the country for a couple of months on holiday. And I just said to him, well, boyfriend's around. He's actually heading out to meet me shortly. But no, I don't have anybody else. Mum's family are in Norfolk, but of course, I was in London. And he kind of looked like he was breathing a sigh of relief, and he went, okay, that's good. And then I'm so nervous now about what he's going to say. I can't handle his fumbling around, So I just blurted out, well, how long have I got?
Oh my
goodness. He goes, roughly 2 to 3 months.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And I'm like, what on earth? How is that even possible? I mean, I don't feel that ill, for me to be on my, death's door. And I think he, as we kind of mumbled with each other over the next, few seconds, I think it suddenly dawned on him that I completely misread what he was saying.
Yeah.
And so he goes, well, no, I think you misunderstand. You're pregnant?
Oh my God.
And I was like, no, but that's impossible. There's no ways I'm pregnant. I mean, I've been in the UK now 3 months and haven't been with my boyfriend. We're doing everything by the book.
Right.
Sure, we were messing around a bit back in Zim, but, that was it. And we were careful and he says, okay, well, that makes sense because you're around 7 months. That's why we're not sure of your exact dates.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh. I mean, first of all, let's just put a pin in this right here. You thought you were dying. You thought you had 2 or 3 months to live. But then you found out you had extra life. You had another life inside of you. That's quite a lot to process in one sit down.
Yes, it's a lot to process. So I was feeling faint. I felt sick in my stomach. I got out, fumbled through to the bathroom and collapsed. So
wow.
I fainted. That was my reaction. Then when I came through, I found myself standing in front of the mirror, washing my face.
Yeah.
Just in shock, complete bewilderment.
Wow.
That this could even be possible. I mean, people ask, oh, but how would you not know? Because, of periods and stuff. And I said, well, I've always been a really small, petite person. I'm only 5'1", so I'm very tiny. Periods for me were always extremely irregular. So for me, that was just the norm. That was not the issue. The issue was I couldn't eat ketchup. And I just didn't feel myself. That was why I went to the doctor in the first place,
Oh my gosh. Well, how do you think God used this new life in your life? What do you think he was doing with the timing of this pregnancy?
Look, it's interesting because when you and I were preparing for today, you actually asked me, how did God use this new life to save your life? And I thought that was such a powerful question because that is exactly what he was doing. He was actually saving me from myself. I was 18 years old. I had this dream and this vision that I was going to be used by God to tell people about Jesus through music. I had spent my whole childhood gearing me up towards this one goal.
Yeah.
But by the time I had left Zimbabwe and everything that I had known and loved, I was living a double standard life. I used to spend Saturday nights clubbing and partying and hanging out with my friends and drinking and getting up to all sorts. And then I was leading worship in my dad's church on Sunday morning, like nothing had happened. Mm-hmm. So my last, couple of years as a young adult was very much 1 foot in, 1 foot out, living this double standard life. So yes, I had this dream that, and I would publicly profess it, that I'm moving to London. Yeah. I'm going to, be used by God to minister to people, share his love through music and spoken word. But to be honest with you, I was an arrogant little sod. And so by the time I'd arrived in the UK, I mean, I wasn't pursuing the call of God on my life at all. I didn't step foot in church. I wasn't plugged in. I was literally connecting with band managers, with the view that I was going to connect up with a, touring band, and whether Christian or non-Christian, it was more likely the non-Christian, people that I was going to be connecting up with.
Right.
And, auditioning for hitting the road and touring and becoming the next big thing on the world stage. Very far from what I know the call of God was on my life as a young girl. And so I honestly believe that this new life saved my life because it was a season of stripping away of me.
Yes. It's funny because that is exactly the question I have in front of me. And I asked it differently because I wanted to see how you responded.
Mm.
Because as somebody who sometimes interviews, I think we take the privilege of assessing through note taking and listening in the pre-recording call what you have to say. But I also try not to assume too much.
Yes.
And every now and then I will ask a question differently because I'm not sure whether I did. I
Yes.
see the big picture from having gotten to know you. I can see what God was doing,
Mm.
but I don't know, that I know you well enough to make that decision. So I'm glad that you saw it as that, because that's how I saw it as you told the story, that God
Mm.
used the new life to save your life, to
So
stop you
beautiful.
in your tracks. And sometimes the best for us are things that are completely unexpected
Mm.
and at the moment probably overwhelming.
Yeah.
Uh, but what he had for you was so much better than I
Oh,
think where you were heading.
for sure.
How did your pregnancy affect others in your life?
Whew. Yeah, good question. Um, Look, of course, it hit my boyfriend and I like, a 10-ton truck because we now had a couple of months to come to terms with the fact that we were now going to be parents.
Yeah.
Plus, there was this weight of guilt and shame that, our actions months ago had caught up with us. And now the truth was out that, I wasn't walking integrally
Yeah.
before God at all. And so the weightiness of that guilt and shame in having to then tell my parents, who were still back in Zimbabwe, still faithful servants of God,
Mm.
still running their church. Oh, it was devastating. And of course it hit them hard.
Yeah.
They have a responsibility before their congregation, to be shepherding their own families. And here they are, with a daughter, 18 years of age, unmarried, pregnant, and
Mm.
you're supposed to be calling yourself our pastors, right?
Wow.
And so they had to navigate that season for themselves, where my dad actually ended up having a leaders meeting with his elders and his people to basically hand in his resignation to say, look, I don't feel fit now to be able to pastor you as much as I love it. And I know that it's my call. I don't feel fit enough now to be able to do that because I have fallen short on raising my own daughter in the statutes of God.
Wow.
Oh, so it was devastating. It was a horrific few weeks following, the news for my immediate family, for my mum, my dad, my brother, my sister, my friends. As word got out,
Mm-hmm.
it was devastating. I'm actually very thankful that we didn't have mobile phones in those days. We didn't have Facebook. We didn't have Instagram.
Oh my
So we could
goodness.
actually avoid.
Amen. I'm so
Oh,
glad. Oh, the
oh,
pictures that would have been taken. I had a very adventurous life before I met Jesus. And yeah, the things that would forever be around circulating would be very difficult. I feel really badly for people in their teens and young 20s who have to deal with that, because a lot of the mistakes that they make are just out there forever.
yeah, absolutely. I know. I am so thankful for my mom and dad's church, the way that they responded with such grace and compassion. To this day, honestly, it just blows me away because they refused his resignation. And they just said, no, you have stood with us over the years and you have loved us like a father. And so we are going to do the same. We're going to rally around you and your family. And we we refuse to accept your resignation. And so I'm so thankful for that. God was so gracious to spare my parents,
That's
in all of that.
powerful. That's powerful.
Yeah.
That's what the church is supposed to do, and
Oh,
that's how the church is supposed to respond. You've had a roadmap laid out for you throughout your life of the way that the church should be and the way
yeah,
that they actually are.
yeah,
I'm glad that you were able to have that experience, that your father was able to receive that, and that it didn't break the thing that he loved to do the most in his call.
yes, me too.
So at that point, you wanted to get married. What happened when you tried to get married?
Yeah, my boyfriend and I mean, we loved each other. We knew that we wanted to be together. The plan was I was going to move to London, get my music career off the ground, and then he would eventually come and join me. But obviously, everything changed in that one moment. And he was just so beautiful. He said, look, why don't we ensure that we are married before Bubby is born, so that he's at least born within wedlock? And I just loved him for that. And so, we had a couple of months, a window of opportunity to make this happen. And of course, we were just kids ourselves, so we didn't have a lot of money behind us. It was just barely breaking even. So it wasn't about a lavish wedding. It was just about getting married and putting things right before God and the church. That was like my ultimate. That's what I wanted to do.
Right.
And so we arranged an appointment with a beautiful little church down the road from where I lived. And we had an appointment with the vicar, went in, sat with them. I mean, keep in mind, I'm 7 months pregnant, right? So now I have ballooned out of nowhere, just ballooned. I am huge. So there's no hiding the fact that.
No, as another 5'1" woman, I understand. So,
thank you for that picture. So we walk in and, we had already decided in our minds that we were just going to be honest and open and share our heart and explain that, look, we want to put things right before God and the church. And so we would like to get married before baby's born. We have a couple of months, when can we make that happen?
Right.
And so that's what we did. We just shared openly and honestly, real humility and repentance in our hearts. And the vicar, beautiful lady, said, look, that's a, lovely story. But I'm really, really sorry. I'm really sorry. I can't marry you guys, because obviously you're in sin.
Wow.
And, that floored me. I mean, my whole upbringing was this beautiful picture of the church and what it's about. And I saw it modeled even when my dad was about to resign, And so this was left field for me. This was not something I had ever experienced before. So went back to the house and bawled my eyes out because I couldn't believe what had happened. Anyway, my boyfriend was amazing. He just says, don't worry, let's find another church. Let's not allow one person now to, derail us. So we found another church, booked another appointment, went in, sat down. Same thing happens.
No.
Third time, I walk in extremely apprehensive,
Right.
walls up, very nervous about what's going to come. Poured our heart out, maybe not as heartfelt this time as the previous 2 times. And same thing happens. Third time, though, when this happens, while the pastor was saying no and saying exactly the same thing that the other 2 pastors had said, sorry, I can't marry you. I'd be condoning your actions if I did. You're in sin. It felt as though it was my Jesus himself saying. It felt like it was my Jesus saying that to me. And it devastated me. It was as if I was now beyond redemption. There's no fixing this, kid. You've stuffed up. There's nothing I can do now.
That makes me so sad. First of all, I'm so sorry that that was your experience. It makes me so sad when people who represent Jesus don't do so with the same actions Jesus would take.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that rejection must have been devastating.
Oh, it was, yeah. Honestly, that was the worst time in my life up until that point.
Wow.
Yeah, I was like, I stopped playing. I couldn't play my piano. I couldn't function. I just could not function. It was like God had turned his back on me.
But God never turned his back on you. It's just these people that were representing him led you to believe that.
Absolutely.
And honestly, that's what makes me so sad. And actually, it also makes me righteously angry.
Angry, me too.
And there's every reason that we can understand that Jesus overturned tables.
Oh, you're telling me.
Yeah. Because people make these traditions and make these boundaries that do not belong. Jesus loved everyone. Now, behaviors or sins, why do you think he went to the cross?
Exactly.
I mean, especially to be coming from these people who represented the church, who were the actual vicars or pastors, or that's very sad.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Oh my gosh, it riles me up thinking about it.
Yeah, I'm sitting here a little riled. So eventually your husband met a pastor and you both went to his church. What happened when you went there?
Yes, so we did get married. We actually ended up getting married in the local registrar office by a Hindu lady. And it was the best day ever. And a couple of months later, our baby was born. And so yes, my husband meets a pastor about 3 years later. So 3 years have passed, okay? No piano, no music, no worship, no Jesus, no, oh, my heart aches thinking about those 3 years. It was just my hubby.
Can I stop you a second? Because it's just occurring to me as you're telling the story. So it was 3 years later, right? So you have this child and there's no music, no Jesus, no, yet at 3 years old is when you met Jesus. And then you went to this church.
Wow. I had not even seen that.
Yeah, I just heard it. Wow. Okay. Continue.
Wow. I love that. I love that bird's eye perspective you have. It's so beautiful. So my husband meets this pastor. This pastor had called him up. My husband was running a business and needed his services. And so, my hubby meets him and they spend some time together and he comes home and he is just buzzing. I mean, I describe him as being like Tigger from Winnie the Pooh. He was bouncing around the house. He just had this energy. He was excited. He was so pumped about this family that had just moved to London to start a church. And he was now his client. And oh my goodness, it was just so evident that he had been in the presence of somebody who knew Jesus, the real Jesus. Okay. And I couldn't avoid noticing, but I was so hurt by the church. Yeah. I refused to respond. And so my hubby said to me, I think we should visit his church and, just go and support him in his little venture, And I was like, no, never stepping foot in church again. You will not find me in a church building. And a couple of months later, guy calls him up again and asked him for another, for some help. My hubby Sandra goes and does some work for him, comes home, bouncing around the house like Tigger all over again. And I'm just like, what is it with this man? And he's just like, I can't believe it's only been 2 months. He's already got 50 people coming to his church. It's crazy. He's buzzing. I honestly think we need to go and support him. And I'm just, for goodness sake, this is not going to end. Anyway, we actually ended up going to his church one Sunday morning, kicking and screaming. So as you can imagine, the atmosphere in the car,
yeah,
not pleasant. We pull up outside this grotty little school hall in East London, and I'm just like, well, there you have it, the church in all its glory. And so we walk in. We got two children by that point. So our eldest was 3, and we had a little one in the pushchair. And I walked through the church doors, and oh my goodness, I felt the presence of God like I had not felt since arriving in the UK.
Wow.
And I describe it in my book as it was as if God just wrapped me up in a big cozy blanket, and I just wept throughout the whole service. And it was like my Jesus was saying to me, I never rejected you. That was man's misrepresentation of me.
That's right. That's right. That's powerful.
Yeah.
I love the image too. I love the image of him wrapping you.
Oh, yeah. It was just the most incredible moment of healing and restoration of my little girl heart. What was I, 21 at that point? And we entered the most exhilarating, most beautiful season for my family and I.
That's amazing. I understand you put down roots in that church. You stayed there, and you really started to grow and connect. And eventually the pastor asked you to be on staff, right?
Yes, he did. So I started getting involved slowly, as the Lord was doing a healing work within me. I began to see the walls begin to drop and break around me. Those walls that I had put up in self-defense and in self-protect mode began to break. And, I began to play the piano again, and I began to sing again, and I began to dream again that maybe those dreams and desires that God had placed on the inside of my little girl heart at the age of 3 or 4 are still valid today, that maybe he can still use me even despite me. And so we certainly did put our roots down and began to see incredible growth, not only in our lives, but in the lives of the congregation.
When he asked you to be on staff, what happened after you signed the contract?
Oh my goodness, there was a shift. It was like this man that had nurtured us back to health and healing and restoration in God, whom we were seeing God was doing incredible things with and through, just suddenly turned. It was like I had now signed my life away to him, and he was now my owner. Oh my goodness. I ended up in the worst 2 years of my life working as a worship director for this church in London, dealing with growing control, abuse, manipulation, public lambastings that just would break me, to the point that by the time my 2 years was coming to an end, I was actually at the point of suicide.
Wow. I mean, the place that's supposed to give life made you want to take your life. That's...
Yeah.
Again, righteously angry. I do most of my ministry outside of church. I do ministry in church, mind you. I have a couple of things I'm passionate about, and I do ministry in my church. But most of the things I do outside of church because God's the one that asked me to do them.
Yeah.
And that's who I want to be, the one who is in charge of me.
Yes.
Because I can trust him.
Amen.
Yeah. And I think, that's what's begun to happen with you. You do so much ministry.
Yeah.
And you do what God has asked you to do.
That's right.
And I think there are more and more people like us rising up to do what God's called us to do. And unfortunately, I don't think we can do it through the church anymore.
No, I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you, especially when we reference the church as the institutionalization of the church.
Yeah, yeah.
Because that just seems to be where there's rules and regulations, control, manipulation, narcissism, because it's founded on man.
Yeah.
It's founded on flesh, Look, I do believe that God uses the institutionalization of the church to bring life and to bring healing and to restore some.
Absolutely. And there are wonderful churches, and the church is a collective whole.
Yes.
There are beautiful people who are the church.
That's it.
Not the building.
That's it.
The people. Yeah.
That's it.
And
Amen.
they're the ones I want to link arms with and be the church.
Oh, me too. Me too.
Now
that's the bride that he's coming home for.
Hello. Yeah. Yeah. We're a body. We need to be working and reaching out together.
Yes.
Yeah. So one of the things I love most about doing this podcast is linking arms with and meeting people all over the world who are doing exactly what God asked them to do.
Yeah.
And being encouraged and inspired to keep going and doing what he asked me to do.
Here's the challenge with that, is sometimes what God is asking us to do goes against the leaders and the people that are around us whom we esteem and look up to as our spiritual head.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my word, then what do you do?
Well, there's an example I can think of right away. It's not a big thing, but it's exactly this. So years ago, I started a blog. God had asked me to kind of put out the real stuff that was going on in my life during probably the most traumatic time in my life. And I was doing that, and it was really picking up speed, I think, because people recognized the vulnerability and they connected with my brokenness and my just being willing to share. And there was a person who was a leader in my church, asked me to go out to lunch. And I'm like, okay. We went out to lunch, and they went on to tell me how they thought that it was wonderful that I was writing, but that people saw me as a leader. And so I shouldn't be sharing those types of things. I should find another way to talk about God. And I remember leaving, and on my way home, I remember being very first sad and feeling badly. And then as I drove further, I'm like, wait a minute, God's the one who asked me to do it that way.
Yeah, exactly.
So by the time I got home, what do you think I did? I sat down and wrote a new blog post. And I was very respectful in case that person read it. I never led to who it was I was talking about, but I was respectful. I said, I think this person really thinks that they were doing the right thing, but they don't understand because they're so immersed in the church structure. They don't understand that God can ask you to do something and ask you to do it in a particular way. And if that's what God says to do, that's what you do. And that vulnerability has now become so popular because people are realizing, oh yeah, that's how we connect to other people, when we share what's real.
Yep, that's exactly right. Our God is a mold breaker.
Yes.
He doesn't want us stuck in the old wineskins.
That's right. And so, I could have listened to that person and not listen to God, and it would have changed the trajectory of my life. I would not be doing this podcast right now. I wouldn't be doing so many things, because God gives us all these opportunities, and each time we are obedient, to what he asks us to do, there's other things to follow.
Yeah.
If we listen to man instead of God, it can take away a whole lineage of things that he had for us.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Now, you ended up in Australia in about 2008, but in 2012, you said you felt a call from God again to pursue music.
Yes, that's correct. So God literally plucked us out of London. It was absolutely incredible.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I know.
That sounds like exactly what needed to happen.
Oh my goodness, it was a God rescue. Like there is no other way to put it.
No.
And it took time for me to heal and to recover from, the abuse and what had happened in London.
Right.
But yes, come 2012, so I had 4 years out where I just went back to default career mode, which is accounting. I love working in maths and numbers and money. And so I just ended up working for a fantastic accounting firm. And for 4 years, pursued that. But, by 2012, I found myself looking out the window of work one afternoon and just thought, my gosh, my life is going to be short-lived if I carry on down this path. Because I knew that I had a call from God on my life, but I just, I was just hurt. And so, yes, I quit my job and took a year out to focus on songwriting and just honing in on my craft that I had, of course, abandoned,
Right.
Started teaching piano and voice just to get back into the groove again. And 2014, we had the privilege, God financed, I mean, that was just a miracle in itself, for the Lord to send me to Nashville with my whole family to produce a full album, which was just incredible. Yeah, absolutely incredible. It was the most insane experience. God took me on this healing journey because we actually ended up going back to London after our trip to the US to do the album. We then went back to London to work with some dear friends of ours on the album cover. And it's funny because the Lord actually had me back on the very same train that I used to take to London to the office when I was battling with anxiety and PTSD from the abuse. Only this time I'm back on the same train, but as a completely different person.
Don't you love when God does that? He does that all the time. He always takes the new me back to the old place where I was before I was transformed.
So incredible. It was such a visual, physical reminder of how far he had brought me in my healing journey.
Absolutely. It's like an Ebenezer.
Yes.
Wow, that's so cool. That's so cool. Now, unfortunately, then your son fell ill.
Oh,
and
my gosh.
You had to leave for his medical treatment. And it's a hereditary blood disorder. It's the same disease that your brother died from, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Wow. I mean, how did you feel?
Oh my gosh, it was like the ground beneath my feet got swallowed up. We were right in the middle of post-production. We were getting ready for this album to be released. The plan was we were going to have a huge concert in our community, and then we were going to hit the road and tour with this album and share the love of Jesus through music. That was the dream all along. And so that's what was going to happen. So we're in the preparation stages of this to unfold, and out of nowhere, my son just falls so badly ill. It was touch and go for a couple of days. Didn't think he was going to make it. For the doctors then to diagnose over a couple of weeks that it was the same illness as what my brother had. Oh my word! It just brought that all back up to the surface again.
There seems to be this pattern in your life that you would pick up momentum, and then what you were doing would come to a halt.
Yeah.
How did that pattern make you feel?
Oh my gosh, so frustrated. The initial thought would be, well, maybe I've got it wrong.
Yeah.
Why am I even pursuing this? It's never going to happen because there's always going to be something that's going to block me.
Yeah.
So maybe I've heard wrong from God.
Or maybe the enemy knew you heard right.
Yes, exactly. Or it's the enemy trying to attack what God has placed within my heart,
Yeah.
and sabotage it, abort it before it's time.
Yeah.
Now, when the enemy comes for your children, now that's a different ball game. Okay, so again, it resulted in that righteous anger being riled up. Okay,
Yeah.
the same righteous anger that I had and disappointment that I had in the church prior when we wanted to get married. But at that time, I was so overcome by hurt from the church, that the hurt overextended the anger in my heart, and in a way left me helpless to coming up with solution. Whereas in this case, oh my word, I was just angry.
I bet.
Yeah. I remember a couple of times, there was actually one particular time where the doctors had told us, look, there's just no hope. Like, there's no solution here. We could try a course of treatment, but there's a very high percentage that he won't survive. He has got best case scenario up until his 18th birthday to live. So they basically gave him best case scenario, you've got 5 years. Worst case scenario, a matter of weeks.
Right.
And I remember this one morning pacing up and down. Sandra, we had hospital appointments booked for that morning. I could not see another hospital ward. I just said to my husband, please, you take him, take the boys, you go. I need some space. And I just paced up and down for a good couple of hours. And I just said, God, I have not come this far for you to now go and take my child. It is not going to happen, not on my watch. And I just had it out with him. And I just said, you're going to have to come up with a solution here, because I am not losing my son. I know that I have a calling on my life. And here I am having to put this album launch and this road trip on hold now, because I don't know what tomorrow is going to hold with my child.
Yeah.
But you are not taking him. But wow, did we walk through a very challenging few months, because like you said, the concert that was meant to be the send-off for the tour was actually the send-off for our relocation to Los Angeles for his treatment.
Wow. But God stepped in.
God. Yes.
And your son went on to become a chef.
He did. He's past his 18th birthday. He is fit and healthy.
All right. That's amazing. That's amazing. And during the time that he went to school and then he started working in a restaurant, you started doing some house concerts from home. You said you were booking like crazy. And what was happening in your son's life at that time?
Yes, it was incredible, because we came back to Australia 6 months after, he was given the all clear. The Lord did incredible healing work on the inside of me during our time in LA, because I actually connected up with a pastor over there who gave me the time and space to talk through my journey of abuse in London. And she was the first person after 6 years to say to me, Nalini, that was narcissistic behavior and narcissistic abuse, and that I was not at fault for that. And it gave me permission to let that season go, to heal, so that by the time we came back to Australia, this is how crazy God is. By the time we came back to Australia, I suddenly had this, I felt like renewed sense of authority to step out in what I knew God had called me to. And so I knew I needed to start small. So yes, opened up my home to these little house concerts that we would host. We had Positivity, which was a high tea spread that we would put on. And then we had Unwind, which was cheese and wine, right? And so gather people around the table. They'd eat, they'd mingle and chat and connect, and no one knew anyone. It's just how it worked. And then we would all gather around my piano, and I would sit and share testimony, share stories of our journey thus far, and how God had brought us through and had restored and healed time and time again. I'd intertwine it with songs, that I'd written, and could see God doing an incredible thing in the hearts of the people present. Some would come with their arms folded and very skeptical about what to expect. And by the evening, they'd be weeping and just so moved by, the journey that we were sharing with them, that they would end up walking away with this fresh sense of, okay, I can face whatever's in front of me. I've got this. If God can carry them through what they've been through, God's got me.
That's why we tell our stories. It's why we have to share. I think that's awesome.
Absolutely. But what I didn't realize in the midst of, this 6-month season of house concerts and events on a regular basis, that my boy was battling with his own mental health and, coming to terms with this diagnosis that he had. Yes, he'd been given the all clear by the doctors, but he was still on a journey himself. There were certain conditions now that were in place that kind of prevented him from being who he, always was as a young child. He was always a bit of an adrenaline junkie, and there's certain impact sports that he was now no longer able to partake in because it was just too dangerous for him.
Yeah.
And so I didn't realize, but in the back end, while God was doing amazing things in other people's lives, my child was broken and struggling and at the point of suicide himself.
Wow. How did that affect you?
Oh, my goodness. When it began to come to the surface that he was not okay and things were not good, I shut down the events, shut it all down, canceled the rest of the year. Just knew in my heart I had to focus on my boy. I had to focus on being mum. I had to make sure that I was present for him and just love him through those extremely challenging few months that he found himself in. He then went on to become an incredible chef at one of the top restaurants here in Melbourne at a very young age. He was only about 15 or 16 at the time. And so, that opened up access now to a completely different world that he wouldn't have had access to had he have just been in normal school at that age.
Yeah.
Okay. And so he then ended up following in the footsteps of, the other chefs and just the industry, really, where you've worked a 12-hour shift, you're on an absolute adrenaline high, it's 3:00 in the morning, you need to land from that high, and so they'd go and smoke weed in the alleyway,
Yeah.
And so he was opened up to this whole new world outside of the safety net of the church and youth and, the safety bubble of family life, because he was now growing into a young, independent man and didn't want my input anymore. Whilst at the same time, he was navigating his own trauma.
Yeah.
So for him, the smoking of weed wasn't just coming down off of his adrenaline high from his 12-hour shift. He suddenly started realizing that, oh, wait a minute, this is a great escape from what I'm having to live with.
Yeah, that's right. They say that there's really not a gateway drug, that trauma itself is the gateway drug.
Yeah, I believe that. Yeah, I believe that. And so he really, my gosh, we walked into the worst couple of years of our lives because, things obviously escalated. And as you know, he ended up heavily on drugs, ended up in the drugs, he ended up in the gang scene as well here in Melbourne. Became a part of a group of people who accepted him, and I think just the adrenaline of that, was living on a knife's edge.
Yeah.
After the doctors told him that he couldn't, that was his get back, I suppose. And yeah, it was devastating. How it affected me, it devastated me. I had to put aside my dream and my passion and my love for gathering people and ministering to people to try and hold my family together.
What do you think God was teaching you when you had to put things aside again to pour into someone that was feeling their brokenness and trauma and needed love?
It starts at home.
Yep.
You can have the calling and you can have all the love in the world and the mandate on your shoulders to reach the world, but if it doesn't start at home, then you've missed it.
The beautiful thing is, so you went through that time where you realized this is my priority. And in 2019, you told me you began to pray for the world and for revival. And then in 2020, I mean, we're all confined to our homes. And you began to desire to reach those people who weren't in church. And there's this new online presence that you saw as this way to connect. Not limited, like you had said, it wasn't limited to time or distance. And the funny thing is, you're in Australia, I'm in Pennsylvania. We set up our time to record tonight. And because it's Eastern Standard Time and Australian, it's 2 different days. And I thought we were doing it tomorrow night. That's how, the internet connects us.
Crazy.
I feel so present with you every time I talk to you, every time, we text or we chat or whatever. I feel so connected to you. It doesn't feel like it's a different day to me.
No, I know.
So that not being limited to time and distance. Tell us about the space that you were desiring to create. And since our pre-recording call, you've actually set it up. So tell us. I'm so excited and so expectant for what God is going to do through this new ministry. Tell us all about that.
Yeah, it's so crazy. It's so funny because I look at it now and I just think, my gosh, all these years of start, stop. It's for an appointed time. Okay.
Yeah.
And like you said, we have seen a shift since 2020. We've seen, this online world now just taking off at a completely different level. And I just had this growing sense to gather. It's time to gather, right? And I've been like, okay, Lord, how does it look? What, you just got to give me the blueprint because I just don't know how it's going to look or what it's going to be. And I suddenly get this, oh my goodness, I put a video out during 2020 called Ripple of Revival. I put it out on YouTube. And it was a picture that the Lord had showed me of people gathering in their homes, not necessarily in the same room, okay, but gathering in their homes and there being this ripple of revival take place, almost like if you were to see the world map, right, in a globe form, almost like these little lights just coming on all across the earth, randomly, sporadically. Outside of the 4 walls of the church, the confines of the institution. And I had put that video out at the start of 2020. Then, of course, COVID happened. And, I just thought, okay, well, that was that. We're all in lockdown now. Nothing's going to happen. And then fast forward to literally just a few weeks ago, I had it was like this vivid picture in my mind to host those events that I was doing in the room back in 2018 to host them online. And so I thought, okay, all right, we can do that. We can make that happen. But I had this, it's about revival. It's not about you telling your story.
Yeah.
This is about you creating a space for the Spirit of God to move in the hearts of every single person present, to touch them in a fresh way, to revive the dry bones, the parched places where they have been left barren, as if they, their own wastelands. Bring your wasteland before him, in a way, and allow the music, the prayer, the intercession, the prophecy to breathe new life over you and your barren places, and see what God does. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay. So this isn't unwind, this isn't positivity, this is something completely new.
Yeah.
And then he reminds me of this video that I had put out at the start of 2020 called Ripple of Revival. And I just thought, that's it. That's the name. And so, yes, we have created this space. And I'm so pumped.
Yes, me too. I had the opportunity to join you, and it's wonderful. It's wonderful. And we're going to put in the show notes some links and information for people so that they can join, so they can tell other people about it. You were kind enough to make a time for those of us in the States as well as those who are on your time. And I'm telling you, it's amazing. I cannot wait to hear the testimonies start pouring in.
Yeah, me too. Me too. So we had 2 yesterday. And the second one, oh my goodness. I mean, I feel like I'm still on the overflow of what happened yesterday. It takes my breath away, because this is what I saw.
Yeah.
As a little girl at 4 years of age, standing in front of that little black and white television, hearing Billy Graham preach. And I realize now that the Lord maybe gave me the vision at 4, but he's had to take me on this journey of me experiencing his unfailing love for myself in order for me to be able to talk about it.
That's right. That's right. Nothing's wasted.
No.
Nothing's wasted.
No.
Well, I'm so excited to see where this goes. I am keeping it in prayer. I'm so thankful that you made the time to sit and talk with me and to talk with our listeners and share your story, to be vulnerable and brave. Some of the things you share were very brave. Oh. And I know God's going to take your heart for loving him and loving others and do amazing things for his kingdom.
Oh, thank you, Amanda. Thank you so much. It's such an honor and a privilege, to be used by him.
Yes, absolutely. So I am sure that I will be talking to you again soon. We will put some things in the show notes so people can. You also have, books and coaching and all that. Like I said in the beginning, there's so many things. So we're going to give you resources to really see all that Nalini is doing and connect with all that God's doing. And it's daytime there, it's nighttime here. So I was going to say have a nice night, but have a really wonderful day. It's just been so encouraging to talk to you today.
Thank you, Amanda. God bless you, sweetheart.
All right. Have a great one.
Yes, you too, love.
Hey, so I just want to thank you so much for spending your time with me. And I want to challenge you to go out today and to just take notice and to stop and really look around and find at least one good thing, one thing to be thankful for. If you do that today, you're going to find so many more things tomorrow without even trying. Because once you start, you begin to see what's always been there. And if you need a refill, you can come join me again for another cup. Make sure to subscribe and have an awesome day and go be grateful.